morning. Thanks very much, Frankie. So yes, my name is Miyoung Lee, and this morning I decided that I'm going to talk to you guys about opportunity. So many of you are probably in that part of your life, or perhaps you're looking for a new summer job, your next adventure, or maybe the next opportunity that'll push you into your career path. So, but what if I told you that a real opportunity, a true life-altering, profoundly path-changing opportunity are often hidden. They're often undiscovered. They need to be chased, they need to be seized, and many times don't really reveal themselves until much later. So here I am, and I'm going to challenge you to open your minds and think about a different way of opportunities to better yourself, your life, and your community. And I'm going to explain this by talking about 3 men in my life. My dad wanted to come to Canada long before I was even born. I was born in South Korea, and as soon as I turned 4, my father, my mother, my brother, and I packed up everything and everyone we knew, left it behind, and moved to Vancouver. Our first apartment was in the downtown east side, and it was right behind the Value Village, which still sits there right now. It was really close to an elementary school, and the rent was cheap, so it was a perfect combination for my parents. The elementary school I went to was, according to a think tank, one of the worst in the province. In fact, it was consistently graffitied, and many thought we should just tear it down. So I lived in the poorest postal code in the country, and I went to one of the worst schools in the province. Not the opportunity my dad was really looking for. So my dad left this incredible job with incredible friends, and he bought a corner grocery store. And he worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as long as I can remember. Not exactly the opportunity that he was looking for. Next, fast forward, I'm in the summer of going into grade 12. I'm going to introduce you to a 31-year-old Graham Niven. Graham Niven was boot stomped to death in front of the Max convenience store a block from my home by a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. It was 1994. He was attacked because he told the kids, heroin will F you up. And that 18-year-old didn't like the sound of that. Stephen Stark threw Graham Niven into the front window of that Max convenience store. According to the court documents, they actually ran back a few steps and ran towards him before they stomped on his head again, at least 5 times. The force of the kicks were so hard that the tennis shoe impressions were left on Graham Niven's skin, on his face, and on his skull. By the time the paramedics arrived, Graham Niven was brain dead. And 10 hours later, his family made the painstaking decision to take him off life support. 2 weeks before school started, it was August. By the time I got into my last year of high school, there was a change in my community. I could see people crossing the street when my friends and I were walking down the road. And the headlines were incredible. This was a juicy, juicy media topic. Teens gone wild, teens swarming, teen violence. And it was very timely because this was the year that the Young Offenders Act was being debated. It was being evolved and changed into the Youth Justice Act. And I was frustrated, reading the newspaper, watching the coverage. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way that my school was being portrayed, the community was being portrayed. So I wrote a letter to one of the biggest daily newspapers in the province that had half of their A section dedicated to this story. It was a simple letter. Hey, if you're going to do a story about doctors, you talk to doctors. If you're going to do a story about politicians, you interview politicians. If you're going to do a story about teenagers in my community, how about you talk to teens in my community? Well, the editor-in-chief phoned me that day and said, you know, you're right, I will print it. We'll see how it goes. It took me 1 day to write my thoughts out on paper, 1 day to tell them about the community that I live in, that I grew up in, and it was printed. And the day that it made that paper, sitting in my cafeteria eating fries and gravy, who shows up? The provincial editor for the CBC. I'm 17 years old. And he says, how would you like to make your print story into television? And what 17-year-old kid doesn't want to be on TV? So off I went, did a story. I interviewed the parents, the father, Robert Niven of Graham Niven. I went and saw Stephen Stark in court. I went to the Youth Justice Act rally, and I put this story together. 7 minutes, and it ran on the CBC Supper Hour News. And at the very end of it, at the very end of the story, the anchor turned into the camera, looked straight ahead, and said, "Thank you, Mia." And there it was, my father's opportunity. Not that his daughter had just done this incredibly, profoundly powerful piece on television, but there it was, his daughter's Korean ESL immigrant name on mainstream television. And you have to remember, this was 20 years ago. So there was my father's opportunity, presented itself to my father 14 years later. But something else happened. Days later, the letters started to come. Letters from teenagers all over the province thanking me for giving them a voice. And it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable that people would sit down and pen a letter and send it to me. And there came my opportunity, the one that Graham provided for me. I decided this was powerful, and that maybe I had some powers of good, and that maybe I was meant to be a journalist. And that set me on my path. Next, Jordan. One of my first jobs as a radio AP was to book interviews and guests for the radio show and to book interesting talkers. So, difficult to do because there's a lot of media out there, a lot of good stories, but how do you find them? So, I'm in Superstore, I'm shopping. There's a stock boy in the pet food aisle, and he's complaining to his boss about his younger brother getting mercilessly tortured and bullied at school. Turns out his brother Jordan was a dancer, 14 years old, an incredible dancer. Not just an incredible dancer, but gifted. Gifted to the point where he would practice every day and be dancing all the time. So gifted that the most prominent dance troupes from across the country were courting him and asking him to audition, to come and see what they have to offer. Turns out a spandex run teenager in high school isn't that cool, so he wasn't getting the best attention at school. So I said to the stock boy, can I talk to your mom? Because I think your brother might have a cool story to share, and really be able to impact other people. So I pre-interviewed Jordan on the phone, and so I said to Jordan, I said, hey, what's up? Why aren't you going to these auditions? Why aren't you going and trying out for these incredible, prestigious dance troupes? And he said, very matter-of-factly, well, Miyoung, I'm waiting to dance backup for Janet Jackson. And I said, what? He said, well, if you join these troupes, you're in and you're working so hard, you don't get a chance to dance backup for Janet Jackson. And I thought, okay. Well, so I booked him for the show. Great talker, and his mom, they're going to come in a couple of days later. So, booked the interview, my boss is super happy, job done. But there's just something kind of nagging at me still. So I thought, okay, what are the chances? I'm going to use my powers of good again. I call Island Def Jam Records. I talk to the secretary and say, my name is Miyoung Lee. I work for the Canadian National Broadcasting Corporation. And I'd like to speak to Janet Jackson. So I go on to tell my story. She puts me on hold, transfers me to someone else. I go and tell the story again. She puts me on hold, transfers me to someone else. He puts me on hold, and this happens about 4 times. 25, 30 minutes into my day, and I get an answering machine. That's it. So I leave my message, and I leave my story, and I go ahead and go on with my day. By the end of the day, I think to myself, I'm just going to call back and see how that went. Again, phone the same number. The woman's like, I thought I'd transferred you along. I said, yes, but I got an answering machine. I just like to talk to a real person. Put on hold, put on hold, put on hold. Long story short, another machine message. The next day, I did it again. I did it 4 times the next day. Left another message. That was it. So the morning of the interview comes. I show up early to work because I want to see Jordan in the studio. And there's a morning team that comes in really early because the show's on at 5:30 to 8:30 in the morning. So I come in early to meet Jordan and his mom. And there's my host talking to him. He gets his whole story out. And he says, hey, so why are you dancing? Why are you going out to Regina to do the Royal Winnipeg Ballet? Why won't you go out to Regina to the national troupe there? Why aren't you going to Vancouver to go ballet? Why aren't you going out to these auditions? And so he tells Rick the story. And Rick goes, well, someone phoned me and I have an answering machine message for you. And I'm not going to do the impression. But it was Janet Jackson. And simply paraphrasing, she said, hello, Jordan, in her Jackson voice. I heard you're waiting to dance back up for me, and I'm so honored to dance with you. And it just so happened that Janet Jackson was touring, and she's launching her tour in Vancouver that fall. So sure enough, during the sound check, 14-year-old Jordan, who's then now 15, got to go to the sound check at Rogers Arena for Janet Jackson, and got to dance back up for Janet Jackson. So, fast forward 5 years, we get a whole package to the morning team on the radio show, addressed to me and the team, tickets to a ballet at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre that you may have heard of, called the Nutcracker, that Jordan was a second soloist in. So those are the 3 men in my life. Ones that I've met, ones that I live with, ones that I love, and one I never ever got to meet. but all men who have taught me about the word opportunity. So here's the hard part for you. There are so many opportunities around you, so many available to you that you've yet to seize and you've yet to chase down, you've yet to understand, because you're not present in your own life. Not in everyone else's life, in your own life. Other than your family and other than your friends, who have you interacted with? Who have you had a conversation with? Who have you made eye contact with? Who have you engaged with? I was driving in today, driving along Cambie, looking at all the folks at the bus stop like this. Earbuds in, phone on, just completely checked out. This is your best friend, your phone, and it has made you into a cocoon of yourself. Opportunities are all around you. The people beside you could be an opportunity that could be life-altering, that are packed full of potential, and you have to learn to be present. So I challenge you, just for one day, take the earbuds out. While you're standing in line at Starbucks, start a conversation. Just simply make eye contact with the person beside you, or eavesdrop in the conversation on the SkyTrain. And you never know when you will be faced with a true, wonderful, emotionally charged, incredible opportunity. And not just that, even better, that you're presented with an opportunity that you can then change someone else's life, and that ripple effect becomes to grow. You are all human beings first and foremost. When I was a teen, we had a pager. That was it. If you wanted to talk to me, you could page me, and then I would physically have to go and talk to you, or use the phone to phone you and meet up with you. There was no way for me to check out and to not be present in my own community. I would venture to say to you that you are all missing out on some great Jordans, or perhaps a Graham, or even your own dad that can teach you and to sculpt you and to become bigger and better than you are. When I wanted to be a journalist, I wanted to tell people stories. I wanted to open up people's minds to the possibility of learning to be other people and to step in someone else's shoes so we could be more empathetic, that we could care about each other. You know what's so difficult sometimes is when they say to you, listen, you only have 45 seconds to tell that story because this next generation can only pay attention for 45 seconds. Think about how much you miss out. Think about if someone turned to you and said, you have 45 seconds of my time. So step out of your comfort zone. Step out of your box. Maybe, just maybe, earth-shattering, you can put your phone away for one day. That you can engage your neighbor. That you can engage the person in the bookstore. So quick show of hands here. How many of you, if you saw a man lying on the street, would stop and ask what's happened? You're walking downtown, how many of you? 6 of you? Because he's probably homeless, because he's maybe drunk, or maybe he's drugged out, or, you don't really know what that person's story is. My girlfriend lives in Yaletown, and we were walking down by the urban fair, and there was a woman lying on the ground. And I remember thinking to myself, 2 things. Oh, rough night, or I wonder if something's wrong. My girlfriend didn't even hesitate. She went right away to check if something was wrong, and sure enough, it was a woman shopping inside the urban fair store that had come out and tripped and actually just bumped her head. But she told us she'd been there for over 25 minutes, unable to, feeling paralyzed because she had a head wound and she'd been sitting there. How terrible does that make us feel when we're plugged into our phones and we're walking by and missing out on life, and missing out on potentially impacting someone else's life? So, the next 24 hours, and maybe even today during the breaks, you can go out and make eye contact and smile at someone or introduce yourself, because you never know how that person is going to change you and how you're going to affect that person. Thank you so much.